All right, new sets day. Exciting times here at Stampscapes. Okay, let's start off with set number 34, nature set number 34, which is code 55B as in boy. We have the daytime cozy cabins, and it has the paddle boarders, the koi, the hammock, girl in water, and boat right here. I'm not going to do any scenes right here, but what we want to do is we want to test for impression quality. And I don't know, just eyeballing the rubber here, everything looks to be in order in terms of detailing. I'm always looking for a lot of tight detail. Some of my designs are a little bit more, I don't know what the word would be, a little bit more airy, okay? And some of them can be a lot more dense at times. Now, these ones are a lot more dense with detail, okay? But I'm just eyeballing this, and I've been doing this long enough where I can kind of look this over and I can see, I'm looking specifically in some areas where there's the tightest detail. And what I want to see is, I want to see if, the designs from the original, if some of the really super tight designs, areas of the design carried over through the plate making process, through the mold process, and then the pressing of the rubber. So we're already talking about 3 generations away from the original. Now we're going for the 4th generation here, which is actually making the print. Okay, now sometimes I can tell too when you ink up the design like this. Now I'm making the first impressions with these designs too. Okay, now there's a release on the molds, that releases the rubber from the mold. Okay, so sometimes the first impressions aren't going to be the best ones because you still have some of that little bit of resist on the rubber. Now we're applying the ink to it. Okay, so sometimes, it's the third impression or something like that, and on will be the best. Okay. All right, now on my ink pad, sometimes when I get brand new stamps and I'm doing these impression quality tests, I ink up my pad a little bit more. But on these ones where there's a lot of tight detail, I don't want this super, super juicy because it's going to puddle up in the tighter details. So I like my pads kind of a little bit moister than medium. So medium to moist, kind of going in that spectrum. If medium is like a 50% inked up pad or something like that, I like it around 60% or something like that. Try not to go with anything like super, super juicy, like, and you're inking up like, I don't know, whatever, 95% moist or something like that. You know what I mean? Like 100% would be like a brand new pad. Okay, now if you do that, if you had a brand new pad or something like that, that's not bad, but I'll show you how you ink up with that. If it's like really sloppy wet, okay. I'll show you what I do when that happens. And sometimes I over ink my pads too. If I'm doing a lot of stamp sketching or something like that, and it's like, oh my god, I inked up too much. I'll show you how you do that. All right, so there's our first impression with the new line. All right, and I'm looking in the tight detail, and all of these little negative spaces, all the texturing in that darkest of area came out just fine. All right, I got a little bit of a lighter impression right here. Again, my pad's a little bit dry right now. I can ink up a little bit more. Something sticky on the back of this paper right here. But it's stamped out. I don't know. It's stamped out. I don't know. I would say even better than I had hoped for. In terms of detail retention, some of these areas I really... Okay, I'm adding a little bit more ink to my pad here. Let's go for a second impression right here. Okay, now if it's really, really over inked, okay, when you're doing this type of thing, what you do is I kind of ink up like this where you're building up the little ink droplets on the surface of this. And then I do a little bit of a wipe like that. Okay. Now this pad isn't so overly inked though. It was a little bit medium dry, I would say. Okay, so let's go for a second impression here. I'm stamping it on top of a piece of my glossy cardstock. Okay. And I'm not going to do this for every stamp, stamping it double. I just want to test for impression quality with all of them. All right, now look how much more beautiful that is. Second impression, I inked up a little bit more. And let me see here. All right. I'm looking around in here in the lighter trees, and my transition of stippling, my transition of stippling right in here, going from a little bit darker to lighter like that, came out just fine. Everything in this area is going to be fine, but I'm looking for the most minute kind of details. Like right in here, there's a little bit of a lighter area in here, which is in the design, so it gives it a little bit more texturing. But it's a perfect engraving, it looks like. Now I go like this. I just kind of wipe my stamp off like that, and that kind of buffs the surface a little bit. It kind of wipes it and gets a lot of that residual, whatever mold release, rubber release from the molds off my stamp right there. You can clean them. Now this stamp is probably one that I'm going to be primarily stamping in black. So I don't really clean off the stamps. Now, if I'm stamping it with StazOn ink, you want to clean that off. You want to get most of it off. This one right here, there's a little bit of a line, horizon line right here on that balcony. So I'm lining that up with the base of my block because this kind of goes up a little bit like a slope right there, okay? Let's see, let's get it like that. So the bottom part of this is not, the edge is not horizontal, so kind of line it up with that line right on the balcony. All right, so this is this cabin right here. I call these cozy day cabins because the window areas are darkened out, like they would be during the daytime, but you can use these for a nighttime type of scenario, and the nighttime cabins can be used for daytime. I've mentioned that before, but I'll mention it again here. All right, so we can take a look at that. It looks pretty good, in terms of the detailing there. By the way, these are large stamps, so I have a big thick pad of paper right here, some scrap paper. You can use a newspaper or a magazine, but also kind of stand up. And you don't want to just stamp like this. You want to get pressure right over the center, and then I kind of migrate my pressure around a little bit. Don't press too hard, like in isolated areas. On this one, it's not so much, but if this went up into like a real thin point or something like that with a tree, don't squash that one isolated area down. Otherwise, you'll get a smushed impression, okay? All right, first impression with that. Looks perfect. There was a little bit of ink resist right in there from the mold in the solid areas, okay? I'm sure the second impression will come out even better. First one looks pretty good. Okay, so it's not just the size of the stamp when you're, stamping it out, in terms of impression pressure that you would use. But it's the amount, like if this was just an outline design, you don't want to press down too hard on it. But this is, you're distributing your pressure amongst across all of the surface area. So linear designs, that are just made with lines, outlines, there's less surface area on those types of stamps. Okay, so again, a lot of tight details in here, a lot of surface area. So just adjust accordingly. All right, here's my hammock girl. Now you're going to use this one with some, trees on both sides probably, or something like that, something to tie the hammock to. And this one right here, there's a lot of detail and transitioning in the hammock itself down here. So let me see if this came out pretty good. I'd imagine so, because it's all on the same plate, you know, as engravers or etching company. Oh my God, that came out so nice. And this is a little bit of reduced down image from the original size, so that dots got even smaller and the dots in between each other got more condensed. But do you see those transitions in here between, I don't know, like a 90%, you know, 95% grayscale. It's all dots and it's all black, but you know, this open area right here, the dots get a little bit more spread out, you know, showing tone. But even in that leg right there, I didn't want it solid or anything like that. And even the slightest of shadow right in here, that little 10% gray right in her arm came out fine. All right, so this is all just going to be the same. You know, they're not going to get one side of the plate, you know, perfect, and the other side's not going to be fine. But let's just see what these prints look like, you know. So sometimes, you know, when you're designing stamps, and then we end up stamping them out, you were not necessarily stamping out the image that we designed, because there's so many generations away from the original. But you just hope that that fourth generation away from the original is going to be as close as possible to the original design and the way that you intended for, you know, certain areas of the design to work. And I would say this one right here is like, you know, it's in that 90 something percentile, you know, 90, I don't know, it's 97% of the original or something like that. Oops, I think I just rotated that a little bit. Okay, so on this little chain here, see, you know, when you're stamping it out, don't squish it down like that, you know, where that chain gets all squashed like that. So I just kind of went like this and I pushed it down like that, okay? So you, on this, with that little isolated area, you just kind of press right down here and that chain will come out perfectly spaced, and the interior of every link won't get kind of squashed, okay? Now, if we're using thicker inks like, you know, like a pigment ink or something like that, just, you know, just be aware of that so you use a little bit less pressure. So I'm talking about like a VersaFine Clair, which is really detailed and fantastic, but just be aware of that. Or if we're using inks that are a little bit, or surfaces that are not porous, okay, like a, you know, like a foil or something like that that we're stamping on. And if we're using Brilliance, you know, pigment ink, water-based pigment ink, okay, just be aware of that and change your impression pressure. Here's our lady in the water, or swimmer, wading, W-A-D-I-N-G, not waiting. All right, and her little details on here, her little shadow around her elbow came out. Those are all the little things that I'm thinking about. So you know, in the past I've been kind of holding back a little bit with some of the detailing that I've been including in my designs, but I don't know. I think I've been kind of pushing it a little bit more these days. I've been adding in a lot more detail. Having my dots a little bit smaller at times and denser. But I don't know, that doesn't seem to be a problem. Here's our paddle border right there. This one is all fairly straightforward, except I have a grayscale kind of pad right in here, you know. It's like a foam pad that, you know, the paddle borders, you know, step on so that, you know, it's not slippery. Okay, let's do this all in one right here. Here's a couple of these other paddle borders. I'll do it in one impression like that. Okay. The more solid the image, the more kind of resistant sometimes that first impression will be because of the amount of whatever rubber releasing spray is applied to the mold. But so these ones are kind of silhouette-y, but they're small, so probably won't even matter. Yeah, I didn't get I got real solid color in there. Okay, now the dye-based ink that I'm using right here is Marvy inks. Okay, and Marvy it's a thinner viscosity than other dye-based inks. Okay, so maybe when you're making your impression, kind of press and hold a little bit longer, unless you're doing it on like a semi-gloss or a matte or something like that. Okay, those ones the ink will transfer a lot faster. Let's hit these koi fish all at the same time. Okay. Let's see, I have 4 of them. All right, let's take a look at these. Now, these ones are a little bit more linear, so I'm not using as much pressure here. Plus, they're smaller designs. You don't want to squash kind of, their fins or anything like that. Okay, their tails. All right, that looks pretty good. These ones here had a little bit of detailing on the side, and that came out perfect. Every little dot is distinct. And I can see the texturing around on this larger one right here. But I have some lilies that I'll use with that one that's on the other plate. All right, there's our koi fish. I wish I had those koi for this one client that was in Hawaii. She wanted me to do some koi. I wasn't designing as often back then because I was just too busy. So getting back into the swing of designing, every time I did that, even if I wasn't designing for like, I don't know, even 6 months, it was like I had to really get back in the swing of it. We were making a lot of wood-mounted stamps, which are really tasking to do. And so I just didn't have as much time back then to design. But, all right, so this one right here had the tightest of details, and every single little dot is perfect in there. Okay, now, like I said, a lot of dye-based inks, they're thicker in viscosity, okay? So again, just find, the right, whatever percentage of ink to use on your pads when you're using these types of images right here. And you might, stamp and hold for a little bit longer than I'd been doing when you're dealing with thicker inks, because thicker inks, dye-based inks work by staining your surface. So like glossy cardstock is going to be fairly sealed off, so you want that ink to transfer in there. So do a little bit, experimenting around. Experiment around with your different types of inks too, your solvent inks, your pigment inks, dyes, hybrids, whatever, okay? Especially when you're dealing with designs with a lot of variation. There's solids in here, there's midtones, and then there's kind of open areas as well, okay? Yeah, and then, when it comes to your surfaces, just adjust accordingly. All right, let's get to that second set right here. All right, this is our nature set number 35. 55B as in boy code. Can't wait to try those moons in here, but a little bit more geared towards a nighttime type of scenario. Just because of the interior illumination of my windows. Let me see, is this one going to fit in here? This block? I need my bigger block. Where did my larger block go? Here's a really big one. Oh, let me see here. Right, here we go. I'm kind of lining up with this balcony right down here. Roughly like so. Okay, my pad might be getting, well, that's fine. you're in a really arid area, you're probably putting your cap back on your pad, but it's not super hot here or anything. All right, let's take a look here. See that? Same thing as the daytime type cabins here. Let's stand up and get a little leverage here. Sometimes I notice my papers underneath here are a little bit textured and raised. Let me see if I can get a nice clean print. I have a lot of paper underneath here, but it's a little bit textured. There's this thing in my printer that's giving me a little crease in my paper. Okay, remember, this is the first impression, so I'm spending a little bit of extra time right here because of that spray resist coming off the machines, the mold on the rubber here. So first impression's fantastic. I needed to re-ink my pad here. I put a little bit more pressure on this one right here. I have this open tree here on the side. Let's see right here. That looks pretty good though. Between this and this right here. I don't see any difference. I don't know. This might be this might be a this might be a 98% kind of version of the originals. I mean, this is a print too, so that's a generation away from the original too, but I'm not seeing any degradation at all between the tightest of areas, the most detailed of areas, and the impression here. The impression right here would be the thing that would be the most prone to changing. The image from the original, okay, because we're using ink on here, it's built up on here, and we're pressing down on it, we're not machines, so, the human, I don't know, whatever element would come into this. But, I don't know, this gives me a lot more leeway in what I'm able to do with the designs in terms of having that amount of detail. Okay, here's the second cabin like that, and that looks absolutely perfect. Remember doing this right here? I see this as being good for the rubber because it kind of buffs it out a little bit. It's not going to sand the surface down or anything like that. But all right, so we're looking at this, and again, in these tightest of areas right here, I was kind of wondering how this tree right here would read. We got a lot of kind of like grayscale in here, and a lot of texturing and patterning, but that looks exactly like my design. See this right here? There's a little bit of lighter to darker up here. So it goes dark and it transitioned. I didn't want that all solid in there. I wanted it to be a little bit tonal, but to be separated from this tree right here. It's a little bit more like this deciduous type of tree right here. Okay. And right over here, I didn't want this all solid in here. I wanted it to breathe a little bit. So see, there's a little bit of an open area. Now, if you're using thicker inks, that might fill in a little bit more. But if it was real solid, it might kind of fisheye, where you get this little, there's a bubble of ink underneath our stamp, and it's kind of squishing around a little bit. But see, if I have that texturing in there, it opens up where you don't get that fisheyeing, you know what I mean? So you might get a little bit more of a solid image. Using thicker ink. So if I'm using like a VersaFine Clair, an oil-based, very surface-oriented type of ink, that's what all that little texturing does in there. It kind of makes those solid areas breathe a little bit more. Same thing with this side cabin right here. I have a little bit of that lighter area, and this area right here is a little bit darker. So it's also going from shadow into the light like that. Same thing right down here. I don't know if you can see it, but it goes a little bit dark to light again right in here. All right. And I'm psyched about that. Okay. All right, so the rest of this should be easy enough. Let's take a look at this. I'll do these separate. I really like this girl on the dock right here. Okay. So you'll use this probably in the foreground unless you have like some clouds around there. Then be like a Zen type of thing. She could be in the mist. Here, let me rotate this around so she's kind of more in the, you'll see what she would look like in the foreground. Like that, right there. So that, have her on the bottom and have her looking across to like a body of water or something like that. It'd be kind of interesting to have her kind of looking over like this is like on the side of a mountain or something like that, and she's looking down across the clouds down here, like it's over the cloud line, like that area on, I think it's like the big island of Hawaii or something like that, and people go there to see like the sunset, I think. Or can you imagine that, having like a bunch of clouds down here and then like a mountain coming up from the clouds, where that's over the cloud, and then having like a moon right up here. So anyways, that's a type of image right there that I find very evocative. Okay, let's just start using some of these other ones here. This is a little bit of a boat. I'll group some of these into a single impression. All right, that looks good. All of my detail in the background there, in the back of the boat right there. There's that little notch right on each side of that boat. It's like a rowboat, and that's where the oars go into that slot. So that little dot right there on both sides is not like a mistake. Like, hey, what's that little black area right there? We all take a look at this. So my rubber guy has been doing this for many, many years. So he asked, hey, there's a little dot right there. He was looking on the plate, on a metal plate. It's like, hey, you got good eyes there. And I said, no, that's supposed to be there. That's the oar slots, Okay, lady on hammock, girl on hammock, or whatever. Maybe you can have she can be on the dock, and then you can have a couple trees here where she's joined, one's on a hammock, one's on a, they're both looking across there. Okay, let's see. Let's try these, get a smaller block here. Water lilies, okay? Always have some extra texturing on our water. And remember, you can repeat these as much as you want, or intersperse them with like some reeds or cattails in the water. You leave, here's a little tip, leave a little bit of a space in between your water lilies. Again, put those fish kind of swimming around in the shallows. All right, some of this is a little bit more solid, so that if you repeat this, it's going from a little bit light and dark. But okay, so you don't have to stamp this out in black too. I kept that one as a solid there, where you can color in that water lily, like a green or something like that. And then you stamp it out in green. I would have a little bit of black on there and put a little bit of green on there, so when you stamp it out, it'll stamp out green. But then you can also fill in these open ones with a different tone of colored pencil. Maybe not on the glossy cardstock. Colored pencils don't work well with that, but semi-gloss matte cardstock or something like that. So these ones are open right here in the background, because so we can adjust the value of them. Maybe we want to make those water lilies a little bit lighter, a little bit darker, so you use your lighter or darker colored pencils, or if you're doing Copic markers, you can, color them in a little bit of a slightly different tinge, maybe, not like vast changes in hue, green and temperature, something like that, you could. But I left them open so that we can adjust accordingly. Maybe if it's a little bit of a darker scene, then you color in those with a little bit of a darker green or something like that. All right, so going off in the horizon, we have our more silhouetted with the elongated shadow sailboat right here. That. Those shadows probably would extend down a little bit more in reality, but I taper them off so that the design isn't like a super big design, Plus, if we want to elongate those shadows, especially if we're doing it on, that matte or semi-gloss cardstock, you just do a little bit more with a colored pencil, and you can kind of taper that and transition that shadow slightly more. Okay. And here's the smaller version of that sailboat. Small version of sailboat, so we're going from something that's very large, now we're stamping a really small sailboat, so adjust your pressure accordingly. It's like I barely press down on that because this design is so small, so sometimes you, over the course of doing a card, you develop a little bit of a muscle memory, so by the time you get to the smallest of image, you might press down on that super hard, and that's where I see sometimes like a little animal or ducks or something like that, have like really smashed beaks or something like that. It's because they stamped out like a really large stamp, whatever, a couple minutes before or something like that. So remember to adjust your pressure accordingly. And again, especially if you're using kind of your thicker types of inks, that's when it would, tend to get, you don't want to change like a flying duck into like a flying platypus. All right, my moon right here. I can't wait to use this moon. Let me see. Let me have it rising up from the background down here. So I'm just stamping it right over that right there. Oops, I guess I should have masked that off because I have an open area of that tree right there. But you can see kind of the drama that we can create from that. So I snapped this one a little bit higher up there because I wanted to see what this boat would look like. Let's see if there's a horizon right up here, Seaside Cove or something like that. Then you have your moon rising up, like that. Can you imagine like that? A little horizon line right there with the ocean, and you have your boat like that. Remember, this is stamped out in black. You can stamp it out in like a light blue or something like that, or you can color it in black, then add some light blue elements up there. So you stamp it out and it's a light blue, but then, fill in the surrounding area with a tone. Let's give that a try right here. Okay, so I'm going with a little bit of that, or a lot of that. Maybe I shouldn't have added so much. Let's see if this, if I have a nice juicy blue here. I don't. But let's do this anyways, right here. You're probably cringing, but this is the way we used to color right here with using the Marvy pens like this. All right, so I'm just kind of establishing a little bit more of a blend. And then, these Marvy pens like this, which they don't make anymore, I guess, or discontinued them. There's probably a lot of them still out in the market. This is the way you blend it on these pens. These inks, then you just kind of wipe it off like that. And, it might get a little bit of stain on there, but not really. And then you would stamp that out, and then you would hopefully get this watercolory look by having a varied impression in terms of color, because you blended the colors right onto the surface. Okay, now remember that blue was really, really dry, so it was hard, having a hard time transferring over, but that would be like a lighter version of like that Blue in there, okay. So you see that little varied impression in there. So you know what I mean? It could be a much more illuminated one. Or you can snap it out like that and give it a little bit of a warm tone. One of the things I was saying in my video when I was kind of introducing the designs after I was drawn, you know, after they were drawn, was that I think I'm going to get some ink up some or paint some paper with glow in the dark paint, and I'm going to stamp these moons out on that paper. I think I'm going to brayer the paint onto a piece of like thick cardstock and then stamp a bunch of these moons, probably in black, I don't know, maybe in some color, on those moons. And I'm going to cut them out. I'm going to have like glow in the dark moons to add into my scenes. All right, so there's this owl. This owl wasn't planned, but I had a little bit of space on the sheet on the set. And I thought, we need a little bit of like a bird flying across the moon or something like that. You know, it'd be cool. You can have a E.T. flying across the moon or something like that, you know, that full moon scene. Okay, let's see. Was that everything? And we just have one more image right here. The smaller full moon. The big one is a big one. Super dramatic, but I thought, let's have it pretty dramatic, but let's have it a little bit smaller, you know, so it's not quite so, kind of a dominant visual. All right, see that first impression right there? It's a little bit lighter in that solid area, but then, you know, just ink it up again. It might take 3 times, I don't know. Or you just you can buff it a little bit like that. Even before you make your first inking up, you know what I mean? Just take it like that and kind of buff it out a little bit on a piece of paper. And then that'll remove the, that mold resist too a little bit. And it'll accept the ink a little bit better, you know, if you kind of roughing up the surface, you know, slightly. There used to be a company that had all super solid designs, and they would take even like a super fine sandpaper, but I never did that, and I thought I don't like the idea of that at all. You know, I think a piece of copy paper or something like that, you know, is rough enough, and you just kind of wipe it like that. All right, so there's our impressions right there, and initial impressions. I can't be happier. Like I said, I really pushed the limit on these ones as far as detailing, you know, in the tightest of details, and great work with my engraving company. And then my rubber guy knows, you know, what, you know, he makes his assessment as far as, you know, I don't know, whatever temperature to do those matrix boards in. You know, there's a general kind of formula to doing that, but there's little tricks and things like that too, based on the amount of detailing in areas that they tweak slightly to do it. And then all the rubber pressing is very straightforward, so I can't tell any difference. I have my laser copier made everything probably a little bit denser too, but I'm looking right here, and the impressions are even finer than just the straight laser copiers, you know, whatever prints. So I couldn't be happier. All right, so anyway, at the time of this video, I just received this rubber. Give me a couple days, you know, to start getting everything shipped out. We got a lot of orders, and then thank you so much for the orders and your support of the line. And it helps keep Stampscapes rolling and in operation. It's tough to stay in business in the rubber stamping industry in such a niche market, but I certainly appreciate the support. And If you have ordered these, thank you so much again, and I hope you enjoy using these stamps. When you get them, if you have any questions, drop me a note. If you have some samples that you'd like me to take a look at, if you're not kind of on social media or something like that, like on Facebook or something like that, I'd love to see what you do. And if you're on something like Facebook or your other sharing platforms like that, Instagram, I look forward to seeing your pieces and what you do with these designs here. So remember, these aren't like whatever closed systems here. You know what I mean? I would use other types of foreground images with these ones, near shore backgrounds. You can have like soaring mountains in the background or something like that. From these, that would make great additions, and images out of these two new plates. Again, I've been mentioning these water lilies in here in this koi. I see them, you know, like swimming around in the the near shoreline for these images right here, but I just think that these ones would go really fantastic with the mystic line of imagery. Any kind of, body of water would be fine. You can do a pond or something like that, but especially those koi pieces with the mystic line of imagery, which look like Chinese ink paintings or something like that. I look forward to utilizing all these kind of new foreground images. I always like kind of characters looking into the scenes, along with our viewer, and setting up that type of scenario. So like these types of images like that, are ideally suited for that. So it kind of sets the mood. You have this character in there enjoying a view of something so that you're kind of sharing that moment with them. Or, from a subconscious standpoint, you might kind of be transportive, and you are, someone might see themselves in that location, and they're that character in there. So dramatic moments, like the moonrise, full moonrise or something like that, harvest moon or something like that, or what is that, a blue moon or something like that, those really large moons, harvest moon, right? Anyway, okay, thanks for watching, and time for me to get busy packaging these sets up and getting them out to everyone.